Hey, this is Roger Thunder, the Desert Shaman. I thought I'd do a video today and maybe try to scare the shit out of everybody. As if we're not scared enough, or people aren't scared enough, or in enough fear. No, this is almost tongue-in-cheek, but the name of this video will be Extinction Event, Man or Nature. And I've been doing a lot of reading lately about different parts of the world, the Antarctica, the deserts, the high deserts, different places in the world, Midwest America, Middle America, different places. Just reading and looking at history and looking at events that have happened in the past and events that are happening now and how it might correlate. Basically, I'm finding out by looking at history that we live on kind of an apocalyptic planet because anything could happen at any given time here. And anything could happen at any given time, not from nature, but from man now, because here we are standing on the brink of extinction with these psychos from the West pushing a sovereign nation state into possible confrontation, and that sovereign nation state, which begins with an R, could annihilate the planet, basically, with the nuclear weapons that they have, as could have a lot of different people on this planet. So when I was a kid, I guess I'm going to age myself here. When I was a kid, growing up and going to elementary school in the great state of Arizona, I love Arizona, love the desert, I was subjected to things like having air raid drills. Many of you my age might remember this. Having air raid drills where you had to duck under your desk in case of a nuclear attack, like that was going to help you any. That was hilarious. And we also had on the poles in the different parts of the cities, and I'm talking, this is Arizona. Back then, we had air raid sirens actually on the poles that they would test them and they would go off. See, this is the kind of environment that I was raised in or born into or whatever, is that we were constantly faced with the threat of nuclear annihilation, or people wanting to use weapons of mass destruction against one another. And that kind of led, me being a baby boomer, that kind of led into what we know as the 60s and 70s, where this kind of shit was just not going to be tolerated by the people of that generation. And or if it was being tolerated, there was going to be a big opposition or uprising to the whole thing to let people know that we didn't like living on the edge of war, on the edge of extinction, which we were living back then. And then, of course, later on, you had the Cuban Missile Crisis, which I remember well, and the JFK thing and all of that stuff. And we thought that was hair trigger, or that anything could happen back then when we had the Cuban Missile Crisis. Well, let me say something right now. As bad as that was, it isn't near as bad as it is now, okay? It isn't. We are a gnat's ass hair from nuclear confrontation, or somebody making a mistake, or somebody pushing on somebody too hard. And like the movie Catch-22, or maybe there was other movies that were similar, where mistakes happen. So whether people intend to use nuclear weaponry or not, what happens if somebody gets reckless and makes a decision, or even the rhetoric involved? Some of the rhetoric I hear nowadays is unbelievable. Like this Boris Johnson in the UK here, he said, well, it's time to use a nuclear weapon here against Russia. And really, brain box? Do you want to live in a world of a nuclear winter? Does anybody want that? Now, having discussed a little bit about the current events and what's going on right now, and how we're kind of like a hair trigger away from something happening, and I would call it an extinction event. Now, when I say extinction event, I don't mean that nobody would survive. I mean, there's been extinction events in the past where a lot of people have survived through the ages, from meteors, the Younger Dryas event back, 12,000 years ago, something like that. Other events that happen around the world. Somehow, the human animal survived through that, even if it was just a few people. But it was horrific. Not something you want to go through today. Now let's talk about other things. Let's talk about stuff I've talked about before that I might expound on. Let's talk about something that could happen from the planet, from nature. Because you see, people, I have said this many times before, as far as cycles go, or cyclical, I'll get that out, change, we're overdue. We're overdue. 13,000 years is a cycle that comes up often. And there's the 26,000, which is double that. But there's the 13,000 year cycle in between major events that have basically taken a toll on the planet or were an extinction event. The Hopi talk about past worlds. See, our history is hidden from us. It's cloaked in mystery purposely, because they don't want people to know where we came from or what happened in the past or anything. So it's very possible that any number of things, let's say like a volcano or an eruption of a volcano on the planet, a major eruption, say like Krakatoa east of Java. That was a big one, and that basically put the Earth into, they're finding out now, put the Earth into almost like a nuclear winter for 2 or 3 years. And not as bad as a nuclear winter, but it dimmed the sun, and all kinds of weather changes were confronting us. So that's one thing that could happen in any number of places around the world. Too numerous to mention. If a big volcano blew its stack, well, we'd see a huge change in weather patterns and everything, like we're not seeing a change already. And what is that change possibly from? I mean, talk to anybody. I mean, where I live here in the desert, this last winter was unbelievably strange. And coming into spring is unbelievably, strange. I mean, you got temperatures one day that are up close to the 90s, and then you'll have a bunch of wind. See, there seems to be a lot of wind lately, and I've talked about wind in the past being a very possible component for the next emergence that the Hopi talk about, the cataclysmic emergence, because we've had fire and magnetic pole shifts and floods and the whole deal. But now I'm thinking wind or some kind of solar wind, because there's been a lot of wind lately, in the desert here especially. And big changes in temperature going from, let's say, 87 degrees one day, and then having winds come in, and then maybe a day and a half, 2 days later, you got it down to 64, okay, from almost 90 to 64. When you know that you can feel every degree of change in a temperature, well, then you're gonna realize that a swing of 20 degrees or more is huge. And this is how it's been the latter part of this winter, and the beginning part of summer is up and down and up and down, and rain, and summer-like conditions, and then winter-like conditions, and then summer-like conditions, and the birds and the trees and everything don't know what to do because they're blooming one minute and then the next minute they're not. This is not normal, people, and you're having snowstorms in Europe in spring and on the West Coast. And if you think this is normal, it probably isn't. I mean, were there cycles in the past? Well, of course there were. But I'm just looking at what's happening now. We're going through some kind of cycle here. And then another component that you have that is maybe a natural extinction event, or let's at the very least say cause a shitload of havoc, would be the sun. And you know what the sun's doing now? Well, we just came out of a solar minimum and we're starting to climb again, and already we're having these unbelievable sunspots coming around, and not only spitting off high M-class flares, but X-class flares in the lower, like 1 or 2.2 or something like that. Well, just an X-class flare in itself is kind of unique. You start getting into the X-class flare category, and if you start getting up into the 5, 6, 7 range, like an X7 or an X8, it could very possibly black out the whole friggin' planet, okay? I mean, everything would go down. Already we've had, with these X-class flares, we've had amateur radio or ham operator blackouts on at least a quarter of the planet. Now, I know this because I am a ham operator. I have a license for doing that, have had since I was a kid. The Morse code and all that good shit. Telephone too, microphone too, voice and Morse code. Well, our network got blacked out. A quarter of the planet, and some satellites have been burnt up. So don't think that this stuff is just woo-woo, make-believe fiction stuff. This is real stuff, people. Now, I watched a very interesting video that I thought maybe I'd pass on some of the information to you, which I really appreciated the video, because the gentleman on there knew his shit, and he was part archaeologist, part historian, part, let's say, adventurer and explorer. See, I don't like getting into people's strict archaeologists have a problem. They're kind of anal and they're kind of uptight and they can't think outside the box. Whereas somebody that's an adventurer and an explorer and has a study of archaeology and ancient history is somebody that is more likely to be truthful or think outside the box and see things that these other scientists don't see or refuse to admit. So this guy was talking about our history on the planet, and he was talking about how things were hidden from us. And he was talking about, and a lot of this stuff I have found out on my own, through my own research. It's just that when I see somebody like this, it tends to verify what I'm already knowing or feeling or studying about. So basically things were hidden from us from ancient civilizations that really they don't want us to know too much about. In fact, they hide stuff from us all the time. And who's they? Well, the powers that are, whoever thinks that they're running this show. Whoever thinks that they have to hide stuff from us or tell lies to us, or whoever is doing that are the same ones that are covering up stuff from the past. And one of the things that this gentleman talked about, which makes sense to me, back, I think it was like late 60s, early 70s, somewhere around there, NASA sent out these two spacecraft, which were probing spacecraft. I can't remember the exact name they had for them, like Voyager or something like that. It was probably Voyager. They sent these two spacecraft out to see why the planet seemed to tilt, why the Earth seemed to tilt, and certain planets were seeming to tilt a certain way, all the same way, like there was some kind of big mass gravitational pull coming from outer space. So they sent these probes out, which incidentally you can't even find this on the internet or anywhere because they censored it. They have taken it down because they don't want people to know, or they don't want people to speculate about this. But here's yours truly that digs into this stuff, and this guy. Come to find out, they sent these two space probes, Voyager, out there to one on one side of the galaxy, or I mean the solar system, and one on the other, to see what was causing this seemingly tilt with the planets. And what they found out was that they found new planets and stuff, but supposedly they found a dead planet, or a planet that had gone supernova out there. And what does that mean? Well, supernova means the planet explodes, and after it explodes, it forms this almost like a black hole or a wormhole, or a whole bunch of energy is still there, okay, that is just kind of sitting there out in the galaxy or out in the universe there. And it moves just like it is a regular planet. That's why they call it a dead planet, because it's kind of not a planet and a planet at the same time. It's a force, is the best way I could put it. And they even came out and said at the time that they had discovered this, except they went, oops, maybe we shouldn't have told people that, because the more they found out, the more it correlated with things like, as this dead planet went on its elliptical orbit way out and then came back into the solar system, like closer to the sun and the Earth, and this solar system, well, it had an effect on the sun, had an effect on the sun, where it caused the sun to go into a hyperactive mode and heat up more and more and more to compensate for this dead planet or whatever was coming in that was causing this. It's kind of like a natural event, almost like a magnetic event. Now, when that happens, the sun goes berserk, and it can basically get so violent and put off so many X-class flares and so forth and so on that it affects the Earth just like, the moon affects the tides on the Earth. Everybody knows that. Well, can you imagine how much our sun, that's the closest thing to the divine emanation that you can probably see with your own eyes. Light, okay, life-giving light. But that life-giving light can get to the point where it's so intense and shining so brightly and going through all these coronal mass ejection storms and solar winds and all this stuff that it can actually affect the magnetosphere on the Earth. Now, if this happens, well, then all kinds of strange things start happening on the Earth, like, perpetuating a magnetic pole shift or radical change in weather or a breakdown of the planet's womb-like protection, which is part of the magnetosphere and the ionosphere and all that stuff up there. So there's another event. There's just a little thing there that you might want to think about, because here we are at the end of this 13,000 year cycle. We're right there. We're probably past it. So it wouldn't be nonsense to think that something could come in, or that something has been coming in. This elliptical cycle probably is every 13,000 years that this mass comes in close to us. That's a very distinct possibility that I would not rule out, because that could have been the whole cause for the ice ages, and then in certain times you have had a more desert, tropical type atmosphere on the Earth, and then other times you had complete ice covering the Earth. That would correlate with this thing going way out and coming way back and going way out and way back. That is a possible explanation, and a one that makes a lot of sense to me, just from my intuitive feeling and all the other stuff that I have studied. So that is one thing that the space people have been hiding from us. And another thing is the origins of our civilization, which took a huge leap forward back. I think it was about the same time that this event happened. 12,000 years ago, or There are cities, okay, that they have found in ancient Mesopotamia, in the Fertile Crescent, and over in that section where Iraq is, that were the original cities, okay, that took this giant leap forward from Cro-Magnon man or ape man or whatever you want to call it. And all of a sudden, modern technology and ideas and societal organization and judges and land ownership and farming and all this stuff, boom, came in like overnight. None of this long evolutionary process. Okay, why did that happen? How did that happen? Well, the Sumerians say that it was from the people that came down here to seed the planet, and it was from the people that came down here and brought us certain things to this civilization and built temples and ziggurats and pyramids both in Giza and pyramids all around the world. People think that Giza in Egypt is the only big, huge pyramid. Wrong. You got them all over the world. You got them clear down into Mexico and Colombia, and you got fantastic, even down into Peru. You got fantastic structures that they still can't explain to this day. They still can't explain how these things were built. And for instance, Baalbek over in, where is that, Greece or somewhere, I can't remember exactly where that is. Or the pyramids, or the pyramids down in where the Mayan lived, down in Mexico. There's some structures down there. There's structures around the world that have got 200-ton blocks that are fitted together that you can't even fit a piece of paper into. That's how perfect these things were fitted together and placed on top of one another into these giant pyramidal structures and other structures. And they're finding stuff all the time. So basically what I'm saying here is that there was some kind of intervention on this planet, and all of these structures were built on the same meridian line so that they could be used for communication and for landings and for appearances from the gods or whatever. So you have that aspect that they have covered up from us. You have aspects of civilizations right here on this North American continent and South American continent, the Americas, that are 30,000 years old. Why do archaeologists and why do scientists and why do the status quo scientists and supposedly archaeologist or historian or whatever, why do they constantly beat this drum, boom, 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 of, oh, well, that couldn't have happened that many years ago? Why? Because they can't think beyond the 6,000-year paradigm. Why is it that they can't think beyond that 6,000-year paradigm? Well, because that is a direct product of Christianity or Judaism or Islam, all of these three Abrahamic religions that perpetuated this idea, okay, that we've only been here a short time and that God created us like a little figure, a little clay figure. I've talked about this before. They can't go against the official narrative because of peer pressure and because there is a controlling factor that doesn't want people to know how powerful we really are, okay? Because if truth be known, if we knew how we were seeded, okay, by other civilizations or by off-planet or by the star nations, Native American history talks all about this. There's no doubt about it. Every one of the mythological, supposedly myths, speaks of this. And they speak of it on their cave paintings and on their oral tradition, history handed down. So you don't even need these ancient cuneiform tablets from Sumeria. All you got to do is, that's a big help, but all you got to do is look around the world. Look around the world and in North America and South America and this continent and other continents and see that history ain't what they said it was. Our origins aren't what they have told us. There's big problems arising now in what we're seeing now around the world with these pandemics and this pushing for war. That is all connected. It's all connected, and that's all you need to know. I mean, do we need to know the intricate details of why it's connected? Well, I've just spelled out a lot of it. So when we talk about extinction events, I'm going to wrap this up because I don't want to get too long here. When we talk about extinction events, we are on the cusp of something happening either by man, pushing for this war and depopulation and all this shit. Why are they doing that? What do they know that we don't know? Do they know about this big thing coming in? How does that affect their judgment? Blah, 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 on and on and on. Or is this big thing just going to come in and, some other natural event and take us all out? Well, am I worried about it? Well, no, because look at my age, number one. I mean, be a nice party out, nice way to go, watching everything go down. But I'm not really worried about it. I'm not really worried about it. But while I am here and while my grandson and son is here, I would like to think that they might have some comfort zone for them. And just for the humanity and that anthropos in general. I would like to see... Now see, one thing that I won't rule out here, or rule in, but I have a very strong feeling for, is the concept, because really there is no big God like everybody thinks, big God in the sky, big personification of what man thinks would be a super high rendition of himself, because it is said we are created in his image. There is no God like that, so get that concept out of your head. What there is are very possible advanced beings that call themselves gods because they live 20 times longer than we did, are far more advanced, have been here for millions and millions of years, seeded the planet, and have an agenda on their calendar that involves us. It involves us. And how does it involve us? Well, we'll find out real soon. Does that mean that there couldn't be some raising of consciousness on a dimensional level and on an energy level, precipitated by some type of what I would call a correction in the cosmos? A correction? Where would that correction come from? Well, first of all, we have to think beyond the normal concept of God. Okay, this little God that gets angry and destroys and manipulates mankind. That's what the Gnostics call the Demiurge. Okay, the evil being that's in between us and this divine emanation. When you think of God, and I don't like the name God, but when you think of the creative source, think of a yin-yang energy, a male-female energy, kind of like Shakti and Shiva. And then beyond that, you can think of the supreme Godhead, like many cultures talk about and basically know about. Okay, that the normal person, like the Christian person or the normal guy or girl in America, don't know about this stuff, or let's say even around the world they don't know about this stuff. They don't delve. They're so locked into their cell phones they can't think for themselves. So this divine emanation that's out there that is composed of both male and female energy, which is in us also, if you're going to try to communicate or try to hook up with any energy, that would be what you would pray to, meditate to, open your consciousness to. That's what you want to tune into. That's the natural order of things. That is a direct connection from Mother Earth, who is a live, sentient being, connected to this couple, okay, this universal couple, which aren't people, but which are energies, which birthed us into existence, okay? This Godhead, this supreme emanation, this supreme divine ancient being, or intelligence, if you will, or energy, if you will, is what you want to hook up with, because it's very possible that, to leave this on a higher note, that a change could come about that would be beneficial in a new beginning, but it would be done in a completely different way, not a catastrophic way, but almost like a new reality coming into existence, because mankind has been corrected or adjusted in his way of thinking to this higher level of consciousness. That's a good place to leave you people with today. Good thoughts, okay? So keep this stuff in mind, and I just thought I'd do another video here because it's been a couple of weeks. I like to do one at least every couple of weeks. And until I do another one, I'll just say adios to my friends out there.